Qantas is making no payments to the union, but Blue Collar and the union have done this separate unregistered contract. In it, Blue Collar agrees to hand over 1% of its total employees' payroll to what the union calls its Transport Industry Training, Education and Industrial Rights Council. But senior official Scott Connolly, who sits on the union's Committee of Management, knows very little about the council. Can you name any one employer who has ever attended any of the meetings of the council?
I can't provide that information.
The fund is mentioned in a number of registered union agreements, but we've searched union and government records to find any official registration of the Transport Industry Training, Education and Industrial Rights Council. We couldn't find any reference to it. As far as we can tell, no such body has ever been formally registered. Yet documents we've seen show millions of dollars have been collected in this fund's name by the union for more than a decade. How much money has been paid into the fund by any employers?
Again, I'll have to come back to you on those figures. I don't have them at hand.
Would it be in the millions?
I'd be very surprised.
You're quite sure about that?
Again, I'll come back to you on the figures, but personally, I would be surprised.
Whereabouts in the financial statements of the TWU New South Wales branch accounts is there any mention of the Industrial Rights Fund?
Again, Ross, I don't have those figures with me, and we can provide them to you.
Well, here's the Transport Workers New South Wales branch financial accounts.
Yeah.
This is what you give to your members. Can you show me in there?
I can't,
Is there
Ross.
anything in there that says Industrial Rights Fund?
I can't show you them, but I can tell you that in regards to this fund, our delegates, our branch council, our management committee of rank and file, democratically elected members are fully aware and endorse exactly this strategy. The ACTU endorsed this strategy.
Yesterday, the union finally admitted to us that the Industrial Rights Council doesn't actually exist. Only the union decides how to spend the money.
I've never known about it. I've been a member, a delegate and an official, and it wasn't until I left and the information was passed on to me that I first found out about it.
Things started to come unstuck for Tony Sheldon and the TWU in the last few weeks. Blue Collar has refused to honour the private second deal, taking the view that it isn't legally enforceable. That decision means Blue Collar staff will receive the lower pay rates that the union signed over in the registered agreement.
Blue Collar has contacted the union and told them that they won't be honouring it and that they can more or less stick it.
Did you offer to waive the 1% of payroll payment?
Absolutely. We had made that offer because the imperative, if that would have made the difference to ensure that this company pays those workers the right rates of pay, the payments that their employer gave us a commitment to they would pay, then of course we would have waived that clause.
Okay, but do you understand that for the people at the airport looking in, they weren't told, they're adamant they weren't told about these payments being made by labour hire companies. They're adamant that it's compromising, it's created a perception. Can you see how it's created a perception?
I most definitely can, and in my discussions with them, we have had many discussions. They will continue to have discussions about disclosing their concerns, discussing concerns, and I understand that they're angry about this matter.
They're panicking because the membership at the airport are aware of what's happening and the fallout of what's happened.
They've found out about the fund.
They've found out about the fund and they're threatening to resign from the union. They feel they've been betrayed by the union.
Few airport workers now appreciate the irony that it was Tony Sheldon who led the campaign against the privatisation of Qantas because of the need to protect workers' rights.
It's nothing more than an act of hypocrisy that we go out there beating our chests saying that we saved Australia's national airline and we saved all the jobs with it during the recent trade sale approaches by the Texan conglomerate, and at the same time we are doing deals for labour rates that in some cases are 40% below our registered union agreements.
Until April this year, Matt Cook was an organiser with the TWU in Sydney, with a brief to chase new members across the transport industry. Now he's the public face of a covert rebel campaign against Tony Sheldon from within his own union.
I want the rank and file to benefit from the union like they should be.
What concerns organisers like Matt Cook is that while millions rolled into the coffers for the purpose of industrial rights, education and training, he claims the union wasn't giving them the money they needed to do exactly that. There's anger too at the lavish lunching bills enjoyed by Tony Sheldon and the union's senior management at many of Sydney's better restaurants. Did any of the $9,000 that you spent in the year 04-05, in fact $8,634.80, about $785 a month in meals on your Amex, did any of that money come from the Industrial Rights Training and Education Fund?
I can't provide you that information, but I can confirm to you that every cent of that money was spent in the interests of advancing our members and their families in our industry.
I'm concerned that we may have been in particular funding staff to work for some Labor politicians to assist them in their electoral work. That's just simply not my belief of what trade union funds should be used for. Our members are deserving of that money.
Some of the purposes for the fund are very broad, aren't they?
They most definitely are.
Would they include party political purposes?
Absolutely not.
How do you know?
Absolutely not, Ross.
Well, how do you know?
We'll get you that information.
In recent years, Australia's trucking industry has been targeted in a sustained safety campaign by Tony Sheldon and the TWU. In New South Wales especially, the union has all the powers of work cover inspectors to enter a workplace and inspect the books. And the union has deployed inspection teams across the state combing company books for irregularities between driver logbooks and pay records. Australia's biggest transport employer group says that power is all too often being abused by some in the union.
All you need to do is tie those people up in terms of producing records and the business comes to a halt.
The problem for the union is that the secrecy it has woven around the fund payments from bosses is fuelling concerns amongst its own staff about the way they've been told to use their inspection powers.
I've certainly been told to back off, and I was unaware that these companies were contributing to the funds at the time, and I was quite miffed that some of our members and some of our delegates were copying fair hidings from these companies, and we were told to go softly on our responses. I believe that some of these companies, in my experience, have been getting an easy road of it from this union. I believe that in some cases we haven't bargained as hard as what we do with other companies who don't contribute.
You're saying you're a very senior executive of the union. You're saying that this fund is completely above board and completely transparent, but you don't know if it's got a council, you don't know if it's got a board, you don't know who sits on it, you don't know what its rules are, you don't know how it's paid, and yet you're asking your members to accept your assurance from somebody that you won't name that the money's being spent on correct purposes. Do you understand why they might be a bit concerned?
I think there's legitimate concerns, most definitely, and we're endeavouring and constantly endeavour to ensure that they're addressed.
Yesterday, the airport workers got one of their demands. The union told us it's now decided to have an independent inquiry conducted by accountancy firm Deloitte.
All of the agreements should be transparent. They should always be placed before the membership. And the stipulation of how that money is raised, what is dispensed upon, is disclosed. And the membership should have a say and an oversighting role in what that fund is used for.
I know and am assured to my satisfaction how this fund is used, and it is in the best interest of our members and their families across many industries.
but you don't know how much has been collected.
So I've said to you, the intimate details I'm not aware of.
To be betrayed by your own, who you've supported financially, morally, and then to have the mechanisms from this big end of town turning over our wages and conditions. Betrayal is the only word you could probably use that sums up the whole feeling out there.
Well, there's a bombshell.
Well, the Coalition love that story.
Yeah, Ross Coulthart was the reporter. The producer was Nick Farron. We should say, you heard there that the TWU has now commissioned an independent inquiry into the fund, and they've told us that we can have a look at that.
Well, they've got no choice. They're going to look at it.
I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't have thought so. More of Sunday after the break, including the latest news.